Good evening. I'm Gavin Boyter, and this is the fourth story that I have written in my ongoing experiment to create fiction from random words generated from an online random word generator. So the current story is based upon the following 5 words. And yeah, it's been a fun one to write, very different. Involved learning quite a lot about a part of the world about which I previously knew nothing, which is part of the fun of these sort of things. Yeah, it's called thermals. Hector had begun to hate Dr. Susan Gleason of the Pan American Society of Surveyors 30 minutes into the flight. Firstly, she talked even more than he did, and if there was one thing Hector Zambrano liked to hear more than the propellers on his 1962 Cessna Skylark, it was the sound of his own voice bellowing over them. Secondly, her opinions on Ecuador were widely off-beam at best and borderline racist at worst. What did a 32-year-old Scottish woman get off calling Quito a poor man's Cordoba? The Ecuadorian capital was far preferable to that dusty relic of fallen empires. Cordoba could boast Moorish palaces and mosques, but Quito had that in spades, plus ancient Incan remnants, and it was nearly 3,000 metres above sea level. You didn't boil in the winter, but got plenty of sun to top up the tan on your lovely long legs. Damn it! There he went again, objectifying a woman, like the counsellor had warned him he mustn't. What a degenerate. So, Hector, Dr. Gleason shouted, as they began to circle the south side of Mount Chimborazo. How long have you been a pilot? At last, an opening. 32 years. Could fly before I could walk, my father said. He used to sit me down on his knee and let me operate the controls as a little baby. Susie, as she'd insisted he'd call her, was squinting from under her headscarf at the snow-capped peak. He'd warned her not to wear expensive sunglasses, as the wind on Chimborazo would yank them clear off your face. Good cheekbones she had, mind you, and honey blonde hair, escaping from the scarf in exuberant strands. Shit, he was doing it again. He reminded himself how irritating his client was, and that his separation from Louisa shouldn't prove permanent. Why do you want to put an observatory down there? He asked. The winters will freeze you solid. We don't really want to put it there, Hector, she replied. Your government offered such tempting subsidies, the backers couldn't refuse. Only problem is the lack of infrastructure. Another dig at his home country. The plane bounced, as if it were bobbing on the currents of a stormy sea. Susie Gleason gave an involuntary squeak, which made Hector smile. Turbulence, he informed her unnecessarily. The thermals can be pretty rough up here. We shouldn't get any closer. I need to get closer, Hector. I have to identify whatever bits of this volcano are in any sense flat. That was a laugh. The 20,000-foot Chimborazo was limpet-shaped, rocky and inhospitable. Its last eruption had been over 2,000 years ago, but many locals felt that another was about due. It had already claimed one plane, a Vickers Viscount, which disappeared in its shadow in 1976. The crashed plane and bodies of its 55 passengers were only discovered in 2003. Nothing flat around here, Hector shouted. Even the goats don't want to climb that thing. Haven't you got a zoom? Dr. Gleason had taken out her Nikon as they passed from the sunlight side of the mountain into its shadow. The air itself seemed to take a deep breath, and the plane dropped like a stone until Hector levelled it out. The good doctor looked a little nauseous. That would teach her to badmouth his hometown. Get closer, won't you? We're miles away, she yelled. So, she wants to get closer, thought Hector impetuously. Okay. He twisted the steering column and the Cessna looped into a steep descent towards the mountain. Hector knew what he was doing. He could safely ignore the hazard lights, indicating that they were getting too close. He often pulled this stunt to scare the rookie pilots back at the flying school in Quito. Dr. Gleason, surprisingly, seemed unfazed. She was taking photos with a determination he had previously only seen in his wife when she really wanted to win an argument. But you couldn't argue with a mountain, as Hector was suddenly reminded. Without warning, the tail flaps jammed, and the wind dropped away again in the lee of Chimborazo. The granite mountainside reared up before them, and Dr. Gleason grabbed the sides of the cockpit, gasping in terror. Hector wrestled the controls, calculating the trajectories on nothing but instinct. They were assuredly going to crash. It was only a matter of where. They had a fractionally better chance of surviving in snow than impacting into rock at 280 kilometers an hour. With enough lift under the wings, he could hopefully use them to skate along the crusted snow. "Susie," he yelled, "get down! We're going to crash!" She did as she was told, and moments later, Hector slammed his $20,000 plane into the biggest drift he could find. The lights went out, the world became an avalanche, and the Cessna folded itself around them like the wings of a giant bird. 17 hours later, relaying their adventure and miraculous survival to a bar full of agog locals, Hector was again silenced by Dr. Gleason, the irritating scientist who had used a shard of broken wing to dig them out of their snowy tomb, then that selfsame bit of fuselage to reflect light into the eyes of the helicopter pilot who rescued them. That Rosie Gleason slammed a bottle of aguardiente, literally firewater, down and said, "You owe me a drink, or rather, I owe you several. You found me the site of our observatory. You have to christen it with me. It's only logical." Evidently, several sheets to the wind, Rosie's hair blew away from the line of stitches just behind her ear. She didn't seem to blame Hector for anything. "I've underestimated her," he thought, procuring 2 shot glasses. He filled them with fiery rum and chinked his glass against hers. "Salut!" he cried. Susie downed her shot and slammed the glass down on the counter. "See you around," she said, and ambled out of the bar. Hector stroked his naked ring finger. Maybe he wouldn't be putting that ring back on any time soon. There you go, and thanks for listening. So if you enjoyed the story, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel and maybe share it with your friends. I'm going to try and do this every day for as long as I can, and hopefully, there'll be something for everyone there, and I will be back. Goodbye.